23. Fred Couples, 369, the only under par round today. Greg Norman, Lanny Watkins, Hale Irwin, Corey Pavin, Don Pooley, young Peter Persons, all at 1 over par, as it has been a difficult day with the wind and the cold and some rain. Jay Delsing also at 1 over. Payne Stewart and Paul Azinger and Ian Baker Finch at 2 over. And Bob Tway, the defending champion, still on the course. He's at 3 over par, along with Steve Payton and Andy North, who have finished. David Peoples, Bill Sander, Ricky Kawagishi. He is from Japan, a young man who led their tour qualifying school and has won a tournament there this year at 3 over. Then Tommy Armour, Peter Jacobson, Ohio State's Joey Sindelar, and Bob Eastwood at 4 over par. Fulton Allen and Kurt Byram, Kenny Knox, Mark Brooks at 4 over. Tom Watson and Fuzzy Zeller, along with John Cook, another Ohio State product, at 5 over. Remember last year, Fuzzy right in contention until Bob Tway won that 1989 Memorial. And as you take a look at the other scores, Chris Perry from Ohio State at 5 over. Jack Nicklaus from Ohio State at 6 over.
And Schultz, another fine player there. Ted Schultz won last year.
Ted was over in Japan last week playing that same tournament Steve Pate was. Jim Thorpe at 7 over. Curtis Strange finished up with that double bogey. Had 3 doubles on the backside. Tom Weiskopf, who played last week at Dallas, is going to play at Colonial, and former champion Jim Simons.
Very hard day to play. These scores are not in the least surprising to me, with weather conditions, toughness of the golf course.
And Mark Calcavecchia, who shot an 88, we are told signed his scorecard at 88, then put down a WD, which means withdrawal. He doesn't have a physical problem at all, but an 88 will give you a bit of a mental problem at times. But we'll obviously confirm that tomorrow if he doesn't show up. ESPN's golf coverage continues tomorrow, beginning with the Senior Tour at the Southwestern Bell Classic. The seniors are at the Quail Creek Golf and Country Club in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Live first-round coverage begins at 2 Eastern. Immediately following at 4 Eastern, we'll return with live second-round coverage of the Memorial Tournament, sponsored by Dean Witter from the Muirfield Village Golf Club here in Dublin, Ohio. We'll bring you some of golf's greats, Greg Norman, Raymond Floyd, and a lot of other tremendous players. And so for everyone here at Muirfield, I'm Roger Twyville. Thank you for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.
Welcome to Jack's Torture Chamber.
ABC Sports and the PGA Tour proudly present the 3rd round of the 1990 Memorial Tournament, sponsored by Dean Witter. We are at Muirfield Village, Dublin, Ohio, just outside of Columbus, where the rain started at about 8:30 this morning and continuing right now. 25 players have completed their 3rd round. But the PGA Tour temporarily suspended play about an hour ago, and the grounds crew here out working, trying to squeegee the water off the greens. They want to try to continue to play and complete this 3rd round of the 15th Memorial Tournament. The weather has been difficult here. Thursday, winds gusting up to 40 miles per hour, and a terrific 369 turned in by Fred Couples, who led after that first round, the only man under par. He continued to lead through 36 holes as the skies cleared yesterday. Blue skies, temperatures in the 60s. Today, though, the rains have come, and Fred Couples and Don Pooley have completed 1 hole. They're at 1 under par. Bill Sander, Jay Delsing at 1 over, and then Greg Norman and Payne Stewart and Brad Faxon at +2. And, of course, as we mentioned, play suspended about an hour ago. Mark Brooks, Paul Azinger, Peter Jacobson, John Cook, Hale Irwin. Tom Watson got off to a real good start today. And Bill Glass had a very attractive leaderboard here in the third round of the Memorial. Riki Kawagishi from Japan. He led their tour qualifying school, has won once over there, an invitee, and he's played well. Larry Mize, Dr. Gil Morgan, Bob Eastwood, Steve Pate, Ian Baker Finch, and Dan Forsman. And then Curtis Strange, who opened up with us with an 80, came back with a 70 yesterday. Raymond Floyd and Lanny Watkins, Davis Love, Mark Wiebe, Tommy Armour, and our tournament host, Jack Nicklaus, at +9. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger Twybill. And
now let's go to Judy Rankin with Greg Norman.
Greg, we're here outside of home at the 6T. You've been able to keep warm inside for this last hour and a half or so?
Yeah, definitely. Payne staying here, aren't you, bud? We jumped straight to this place as we heard there was a rain delay, and fortunately the people here have been absolutely fabulous. Gave us hot chicken soup and all that stuff. We watched the NBA and...
Sports and the PGA Tour welcomes you to the 1990 Memorial Tournament, sponsored by Dean Witter. We're at the Muirfield Village Golf Club in Dublin, Ohio, just outside of Columbus, where weather has been the big story this week. Winds on Thursday during the first round with only one subpar round. And then on Friday, well, the weather was pretty good, but Saturday some rains came back, and the tournament was delayed for some 2 hours, but they did complete the third round. But rains all last night and rains throughout the day. They finally subsided a couple of hours ago, but as you take a look at the golf course, the creek's swollen and the course unplayable. Water in the bunkers, and even if they tried to play on certain holes, there was just nowhere to drop the golf ball. They delayed it to 11:15 start, then they went to 1:15, really did everything in their power to try to let the course dry out, and with the grounds crew working feverishly, but it just wasn't to happen. So this tournament will conclude after 54 holes. And after 54 holes, the winner was declared, and it was Greg Norman, who came in with a fine 369 yesterday with a one-shot victory over his third-round playing partner, Payne Stewart, who won a week ago at Dallas. Fred Couples, who led this tournament after 36 holes with a double bogey at 18. Brad Faxon at 2 over, along with Mark Brooks. Don Pooley, who had the lead briefly during the third round, also at 2 over par. And this is how it happened. Yesterday, during the third round of the Memorial Tournament, Greg Norman, at 18, had hit a 4-iron into the bunker here, had a buried lie, and this a very difficult shot to a very fast green at 18, the par 4 finishing hole.
After all about 4:35 o'clock, the leader Fred Couples is 2 under par.
This late yesterday afternoon, around 6 o'clock, as Greg will leave himself about 12 feet. Now, that's a treacherous downhill putt from there, but playing along with him is Payne Stewart, who's had a marvelous day. Stewart now looking at this putt for a birdie and a round of 4 under 68 to get him to even par after 54 holes, and it just slides by. So Payne would tap that in for his par and a round of 3 under 69. Now, Greg has this par putt also for a round of 3 under 69, which would leave him even par for the tournament, and Greg Norman would roll it in there at 18, and little did he know yesterday just how big a save that would be. Now, the man who had led this tournament through 36 holes, Fred Couples, off the tee at 18, had hit a driver, saw it hit in the fairway, but Don Pooley, Fred Couples, tournament officials, they could not find the ball, so it was supposed that it went in the water. He took a drop here. This was his third shot now at 18. And Fred would find the rough there. Now, Couples had played the front side in 2 under, had got it to 3 under through 10 holes, but really struggled, making 3 bogeys down the stretch. Now, his 4th shot here at 18. Now, Fred in the last group of the day, and this is nearing 7 o'clock Eastern time. And you can see that ball rolling back down. So Fred would have that putt now for a bogey, which would put him to 1 over for the tournament and 1 shot back of Greg Norman. But it just drifts right on him, so Fred Couples would make double bogey at 18, and after that marvelous 369 in the opening round, the only man under par, he shoots 75 in the third round, and that leaves him at 2 over. So the final results now in this 15th Memorial Tournament. The winner, Greg Norman, his second victory in 1990. He is now the leading money winner on the PGA Tour with over $760,000 in earnings. Payne Stewart, a winner a week ago in Dallas, comes back and plays extremely well. One shot back. Then Fred Couples at 2 over, Brad Faxon, Mark Brooks, and Don Pooley, those players at 2 over, and some other names, Peter Jacobson. Bill Sander had a wonderful tournament. Paul Azinger, Dr. Gil Morgan, Steve Pate, Bill Glasson, and then Hale Irwin was in at 5 over. And hi, everybody. I'm Roger Twybill. And thanks to the Memorial's television sponsor, Dean Witter, along with the assistance of our other advertisers, Lincoln, Mercury, and Borden, there will be fewer commercial interruptions during today's telecast of the Memorial. We have a lot more for you throughout the day, of course. As I mentioned once again, play halted today. The tournament 54 holes, but we've got some interviews with Greg Norman. Fred Couples will also be taking a look at last year's final round, an exciting duel between Fuzzy Zeller and Bob Tway. But right now, let's introduce you to our tournament host, Jack Nicklaus. And Jack, the weather in Columbus has struck once again in your hometown. I know that you and the tournament officials, everyone did as much as they could today to try to get this final round in.
Well, they tried everything they could, Roger. They delayed once this morning, and they delayed again later on this afternoon. They did everything they could, including adjust the pairings so that even with the late times, that the chance of getting a winner on television was there. And they had the last tee time was scheduled for 3:03, which meant in threesomes about 5 hours before really you were going to get to darkness and had the ability to play. But they couldn't start. That first group had to start by 1:15, and I was out on the first fairway with David Eager at about 10 minutes after 1, trying to get the water off there, hoping we could get started, and it just wasn't to be. The first fairway was totally saturated. There really wasn't a place to drop the ball, and there were 5 or 6 other fairways that were worse than the first fairway. Right. And unfortunately, even as nice as the golf course was, and the greens were fine, there just wasn't anything we could do, and you just couldn't play. And as a result, we've got Greg Norman as our winner, and which I guess isn't all bad, is it?
Oh, I like it.
But it was, we had a very unusual week of weather. The high winds, that made the greens very hard when rain was forecast on Thursday. Nice day on Friday, but still very windy, and then the rains on Saturday, and then the extreme rains on Saturday night. So the only thing we didn't have was snow, and I suppose if we'd waited around another day, we'd have found that.
Well, we could have. I mean, they had some snow about 300-400 miles north of here, but there was a little hail the other day, a lot of different conditions, and right now we welcome Greg Norman. And Greg, congratulations to you.
Well, thanks, Roger.
Have you ever won a tournament like this before?
Never before, and I still don't know how to feel. I mean, I woke up this morning and saw the weather conditions, but I didn't want to say to myself, well, it could be rained out today. I mean, because that could lead you into a false sense of security, and I wanted to keep telling myself, well, you got to go play 18 holes today, you got to win a golf tournament the hard way. And so that's all morning long. And when they called me up and told me it was a 3:03 tee time, I think, now I got another 3 hours to sit around here. When you're keyed up and ready to go, you want to go play. And nobody likes to win this way, I'm sure. We all wanted to go play. We're competitors. We love that pressure. We love the feeling of having to execute a certain shot to win or try and get back into contention. And just fortunate for me, I'm in the lower score.
David Marr, of course, is with us right now, and I think, David, sometimes golfers are too hard on themselves. You get a chance to win one like this, you just take it, right?
Oh, well, sure, you just take it. You would rather play 72. Yeah. That's historically the way it's done. But in thinking and looking at Greg and thinking about what's happened to him through the years, the 2 biggest putts to me that he's made this year were both for par putts. The one at Doral at the last hole that got him in the playoff, and the one here yesterday that at that point, of course, he doesn't know that he's going to win the tournament. But he's done a lot of great things, and he's had a lot of weird things happen to him, so take it. And
I will. I'm not going to give it back.
Greg, you said that you worked a little bit on your putting stroke, and you felt that was a difference for you this week.
Yeah, well, David called me up last week, and Byron Nelson, he said he had a tip for me, and he said he'd like to see me sometime this week. And I played with Raymond Floyd. You never gave me that tip anyway. What was it?
Oh, Raymond told you.
Anyway, I played with Raymond Tuesday and Wednesday. I just went out and played with Jack, and then I was on the putting green, and And I was, you know, he came up to me and said, you know, you really lost the flow of your stroke. And I normally have a nice, long, low stroke, and he felt like I was a little bit shortened just a touch, and there wasn't consistent roll coming off the putter face. And so I worked on my speed all week. Once I told, while I was over the putt, I said, now you've got the right line, now just give me the right speed. And once I had that, I fell in line very, very easy and quickly with my stroke.
Well, Jack, I know that you were anxious to play today. You felt you could catch this guy. You're never out of the golf tournament. I think there were a lot of guys out there today that felt like, you know, within 5 or 6 shots, you go out and throw an early round, especially since the greens had softened up, that a lot of guys felt that they could be in contention.
Well, realistically, I was probably not in contention, Roger, but I think that, you know, I always feel like if I can put 65 on the board, you never know what's going to happen. And I guess I was 8 shots back going to the last round, and
yeah, it would have been a little tough.
Okay. But, you know, Norman is never out of it at 8 shots behind.
Well,
so.
He's proven that.
That's right. And I've always felt that that's the attitude you've got to take. But I was playing well this week. I gave away a lot of strokes, which I have had a tendency to do lately. But that's all right. I think that I'm quite happy with the way I'm hitting the ball.
David, we saw early this week, of course, Thursday, just really conditions that when Fred Couples came in with that 369, we were just all sitting back because it was such a great round. But what about the conditions and, you know, how the players responded this week?
Well, I think, you know, maybe that better be a question for Greg, but in looking at it and observing it, Muirfield by itself is a tough golf course, just if it's in nice weather. Yeah. Then you put hard wind and it dries the greens and you've got good rough. You're going to see the scores go up. And there were some very, very bad scores by some pretty big-name players. And some of them didn't accept that very well either. I think you have an obligation to play as much as you can. I remember when Jack shot 83 at Royal St. George in the British Open and 80-something at Hazeltine. I'm sure he did not like that, but he was there the next day. As you say, his 73 on the first day may have been better than the 69 he shot yesterday. Only he could evaluate that for me. But you just knew the scores were going to be high. Mike McBride and his crew here had done a great job. They just got overwhelmed finally with all the water. It eventually has nowhere to go. Friday was a little better. Still the scoring wasn't all that good. The average for the field was 76. But this golf course, you aren't out of it when you're 7 or 8 shots back, because if you did happen to shoot 65, very easy to shoot 73 or 4. So that's the way, and of course that's the way great players think anyhow.
Would you concur with that, Greg, that 73 that you had on the opening day compared to the 69 yesterday? I mean, can you rate that?
Well, see, the golf course changed complexity during the whole 3 days. I mean, the first day, and Jack hit the nail on the head down at the presentation, he said, you've got to gut it out. You've got to realize under tough conditions like that you're not going to make a lot of birdies, and pars are like making a birdie on some holes. So, you know, you've got to go along, and it's just a matter of patience, keeping your mind in click. I mean, it's very easy to lose your patience and drop a double bogey, and then all of a sudden now you're really behind the 8 ball. So you really got it out the best you can. Conditions were made even more difficult on Thursday because of some of the pin positions, which was a shame because you don't need to do that on a great golf course. And, you know, and then come Saturday, the golf course changed completely because now the wind's from a different direction. It's soft. It's playing as long as it can ever play because the tee markers are still back. And so the golf course played 2 different characters from Thursday to Saturday. And, you know, I would equate both of them were pretty the same. I mean, 73 was a good score, but 69 yesterday was as good as.
Jack, are guys maybe not as tough today as they used to be? I mean, do you find the things are so nice on the tour, conditions are excellent, that maybe when things do get a little adverse, I mean, we had 7 people who left this tournament after the first day.
Well, Roger, I think that, you know, I think the tendency is that when you have things as good as we have them here, that it's a little tougher to probably get it out. I think that you know, the Ryder Cup has been sort of an instance that I think that an example that the European players have had much tougher weather conditions in Europe to push it. I mean, the day like we had on Thursday here was a common day in a lot of British golf tournaments. I mean, it's a common day. I mean, you just have wind like that, and you just have to gut it out and go on and keep playing. And you know, those conditions, and we don't have that very much here, and we are spoiled a little bit. But I don't really fault the players. I really fault the system, I suppose, more than anything else. And the system of, you know, our all-exempt tour, and we make it so easy for everybody that nobody is really ever in danger of anything. It's very easy out here, and I think it's you know, the players all try their hardest. They all work very hard. They're all very, very good players, and it's just maybe it's you know, a little adversity gives you a little bit more character, I suppose. And you know, I know that, you know, I know Greg feels that way. And when he won at Turnberry, I mean, the weather conditions we had at Turnberry, I mean, again, he had to gut it out there that week. And I mean, I remember some of the holes at the 17th hole, for instance, I mean, at Turnberry that week. Remember, I mean, you good gracious, I mean, that hole's normally a driver and an iron. We were playing with driver, 3-wood, and 5 or 6 iron or something.
I remember that year I hit driver, 6 iron.
Yeah, I mean, to a hole that you can reach most every time.
Exactly right.
And you know, there's always that feeling to say, you know, I've had enough of this. Right. And you know, much to Greg's credit, and a lot of the guys out here, I mean, there's not very many of them, and even some of the guys who withdrew, I don't, you know, I think that they had their own reasons, but so I don't fault them really. It's just, I think the system we've just made a little bit too easy for ourselves.
Well, I know we'd always like to have good weather, and you've had your share of bad weather here at the Memorial. All we can do is keep our fingers crossed. But what about next year? We've got a different date next year, and then on down the road.
Well, we're a week later next year, which has certainly will help. We played the first 7 or 8 Memorial tournaments on the date that we're playing next year, and you know, hopefully, you know, I suppose I think a lot of comments came from the players today. They said, Jack, you know, let us help you get the date where it should be. You know, I can lobby only so much to get what we want. And he says the players said they can help us get where we should be, and they'd like to be a little bit later, and I think it probably should be a little bit. It should be the first part of June somewhere.
You guys have a lot of things in common, but one of them is this new J driver that Jumbo Ozaki brought over. And Greg, first of all, I'll ask you, I mean, you drive it as far and as accurately right now, and as David has said, maybe in the history of golf, along with a guy named Jack Nicklaus sitting next to us, but how much farther do you have to, how much longer do you have to be? I mean, how much closer? Can you accept 275 right down the middle every time? If
I tell you, if you can get 300, you'll take it. I mean, there's no question
about it. Who wants to worry about 275? You can get 300, that's right.
Well, you know, I mean, you think about par 5s now, 3 irons and now 5 irons. Now, 25 yards is a major difference, and as long as you can keep hitting the ball straight, then you go for it. I'm not all for it, but I got swept up in it because it's technology. If other guys are doing it, then why should I give away an advantage that I could have myself? And, you know, like the 3-wood I've got now, I know the 3-wood's a lot longer than my old 3-wood, so now even par 5s are like New Orleans. I told Jack this shot at New Orleans. I hit at the 6th hole there, par 5. And I had 268 into the wind. Now, I would never think of hitting a 3-wood 268 in the wind under the conditions. And boom, I said to Bruce, just watch this. And I hit a 268, 270. And I would, you know, the old club, I couldn't do that. But that's technology, and I'm not going to give up that advantage if I can use it.
Are we, Jack, with that sort of equipment, are we outgrowing the golf courses? I mean, are the courses becoming obsolete because how far you guys are hitting it now?
Well, I think it's a big problem, Roger. I mean, if you look at the top 20 golf courses, I suppose, in the country, at least how they're rated, Muirfield is the only one that's been built in the last, what, 50 years, I suppose, I'm guessing? Maybe, you know, somewhere in that area. And most of those golf courses that relate to tournament golf, you have to do something to them to take the driver out of your hand, or they're obsolete. And so they're only obsolete for one reason, and that's equipment. And you know, my feeling has been that we need to bring the golf ball back. We need to bring some of the equipment back. We need to bring these great golf courses back into play and put the driver back in our hands. And you know, you look at it, but if you look at it from another standpoint too, I mean, I look at it from a design standpoint. Every time that I go out to build a golf course, the owner says, Jack, I want to have a golf course that has a chance of being in the top 10 or 20 in this country. Okay, how do I do that? Well, there's only one way, and that's you've got to build a golf course very difficult. I said, look, you don't want a golf course. He says, Jack, I need a difficult golf course or I'll never get a rating. So we build golf courses that are for the future. And we're building them for the fact that the technology, I mean, the driver and 3-wood that Greg's using now, we didn't have 2 months ago. He now has it. What are we going to have next week? And if you keep building golf courses and you keep building them more and more difficult, the equipment is going to keep following along. Well, I'd much rather build golf courses a little bit easier, live them a little bit of thing. I mean, we could take Muirfield here and bring the equipment back, and you could take this golf course and shorten it 200 or 300 yards and get a greater variety within the golf course. You could have one day a par 3 could be a 7-iron, the next day could be a 4-iron. I mean, you could take those changes and you know, make some of the par 5s reachable one day, 11 reachable one day, and not reachable. You could do some things like that rather than having to put everything in the back on the back tees. And we have so many wonderful golf courses that technology is just taking us right out of the game. But Greg is dead right. As long as we're having that technology, as long as they're giving it to you, you cannot take, you know, you can't pass it up. You've got to take advantage of it because everybody else is taking advantage of it. Somewhere, sometime, we have got to bring it back to where we have so many great golf. I mean, this golf course here is going to be obsolete, you know, another 10 years if all the equipment has come along. I mean, I looked at it this week, and when we first started playing here 10 years ago, we didn't play 1-irons off very many tees.
Mm-mm.
How many 1-irons did you play this week the first round? I bet you played a half a dozen 1-irons the first round.
Yeah, I would hit a lot more iron shots, yeah.
We never used to do that.
Another thing you leave out, you cut the fairways here with a triplex, and looking at these fairways, they look better than greens I used to put on. I want to know a stimp meter on how fast some of these fairways are.
Well, David, we do not cut the fairways as short as they cut them in the U.S. Open. At the U.S. Open the last couple of years, they've cut them at, I could be wrong, but I think it was 3/8 of an inch. Now, we're cut at 7/16. We're cut just under a half an inch because I think the ball rolls too fast.
Yeah.
And the Open fairways were really almost like with the same length we used to putting greens. And you know, they talk about the speed of greens today. I was with Pete Dye the other day, and we were out at American Society of Golf Course Architects, and we were talking about the speed of greens. And evidently, the fellow that invented the stimp meter, Mr. Stimp, had he said he had taken that film of Oakmont in 1962, where everybody said were the fastest greens we ever played. Now, I don't know whether it's true or not, but he said that those greens were rolling by what he took off the film at 6.5 or 7. 6.5 or 7.
Your fairways are
Our
faster.
fairways are faster than that. Now, I think they were running faster than that, but still, we thought those were the fastest things we've ever seen. These greens this week probably rolled 12.
11.5, 12, yeah.
12, 11.5, 12, 12.5, somewhere in that area. And we could, and certainly the greens could have been a lot faster if we wanted. We've kept the cut up. We're not cutting anywhere near as short here as we used to. And, you know, where do we go? You know, how far do we go with it until we bring back some sense into the game of golf?
Greg, just briefly, after all of those stabs that you took in a lot of different tournaments, any sort of justification or in the back of your mind saying, well, you know, I finally got one back?
No, not at all, Roger. I mean, I don't approach it like that. I mean, it's like 3-putting the 5th hole. You don't go to the 6th hole and say, well, I got to get that shot back. You can never get it back. I mean, it's done. What's done is done. You know, those things have happened, and, you know, I mean, they happen for a reason. Guys hold the shots to win. And, you know, honestly, I mean, I can't say this now. It hasn't bothered me. I can't believe the number of people who think it has bothered me. And they're looking for a reason. Why it's happened, and looking, well, why aren't you upset, or why aren't you reacting in a different way? I accept them. You know, it's like water off a duck's back to me, and as long as I keep that attitude, if I turned around and wanted to react or reacted the way everybody wanted me to, then I'd be in a funny farm for sure. I mean, I'd be in a straitjacket and wouldn't be able to play. But I love this game with a passion. I mean, I love my practice. I love going to the golf course. I love the thrill of competition. As long as I have that feeling in me, I want to keep on doing that. And if those guys keep holding shots to beat me, well, so be it. But at least I know I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
Well, Greg, congratulations on a great 54 holes here. I know you're taking a couple weeks off, and good luck, the U.S. Open, other events coming down. And Jack, thank you once again for being a great host, and good luck to you. You'll be back at the Open, and we'll be seeing you shortly. Of course, we've got a U.S. Open preview show also coming up, and David, as usual, we'll see if we can get through a tournament more than 54 holes here before
like your senior tour.
That's right. Houston,
wait a minute.
Wait a minute, that's all right.
No.
Thank you all very much. Congratulations, Greg. As we take a look, they're still out working on the course right there. And, of course, you realize that Freddie Couples had played a couple of great rounds, and we had a chance earlier to talk with Freddie and ask him about his rounds yesterday. Well, joining me right now is Fred Couples. And Fred, obviously a big disappointment for you. You led this tournament after 36 holes. You really played some terrific golf. You came off yesterday after making double bogey at 18. You must have been in a dire mood at that time.
Well, I was, and obviously the question is, you know, about not playing today, and I lost with a double bogey. But I just look at it as Greg played a good round, and I let it slip, and I was looking forward till today. You know, I played 18. Don Pooley hit his drive, and to me it didn't look like it just came out of the sky nowhere, and I felt like 3-wood would not have been the club, and I was thinking, you know, I'm tied and I want to stay there and maybe make a birdie, so I tried to hit driver, pulled it, and you know, it didn't look bad. I was just a little upset because I thought it would be in the rough behind the trees and have no shot, and we got down there and it was not found. It went in the creek and then making double, so it was a bad way to finish the day. But looking at today, you know, I felt like we were going to play. Yeah.
You had gotten it to 3 under par through 10, and the closest pursuer was some 4 shots behind at that time, but then you took a bogey at 11, you took a bogey at 14, and another one at 16. What happened through that stretch?
Well, I was playing pretty well. I think the biggest break was when we stopped the first time after 2 holes, because it had been a very long day. I could barely hold on the club. Went back out, and I really played very, very well. I drove the ball well and got to 10 and lipped out a birdie putt that I thought was in, and you know, and it didn't take any steam out of me. The next hole, I pulled a 3-wood, and the wind was blowing left to right, and I felt like it would push a little bit over there, and it didn't. It went in the creek and made bogey, which, you know, it kept me on my toes, and I hit it in the rough on 14, and then got it in the bunker and made bogey, and then actually made a very good bogey on 16. I plugged it down that bunker and got it out and had a par putt, missed it, and then of course 18. But it was just one of those things. I felt like we were out there so long, and I don't know if I'd lost concentration, which I've been doing better, but it, the course did toughen up. The wind started to blow, and it got really cool. And you know, I mean, I mishit some shots and made some bogeys, which I think anyone, you know, Don Pooley was making some nice par putts, and we were hanging in there as best we could, and he bogeyed 18, and I doubled it, and as it turns out, you know, we both lost.
At 18, when you hit that driver, you both saw it land in the fairway or toward the rough, but you got down there and nobody seemed to know where it was at, so you just assumed it was in the water at that time, right?
For sure. When I hit it again, you know, when I got down there, I just was talking to my caddy, you know, I said, hopefully I got a good lie or I can blast it up the fairway. And we got down there, and there was a marshal there, and usually when they go in the creek, they'll not blaming anything on anyone, because there's only one other spot it could be was in the creek or in the rough. And got down there, and the ball was not to be found, and then a bunch of people started telling me where it went in, and that's when I started to get a little edgy, because there was a ball mark on the edge of the fairway, and then an official came, and you know, he had said, well, it probably went in up here, and there was no way. And then some other guy in the gallery said it went in by it. There was one of your microphones, and that's right where the marshal was standing. So we know it didn't go in there. As it turned out, you know, I dropped it, and I had a clear shot, but it had a 5-iron from 170 yards, and I just pulled it left to the green around the trees and ended up making double.
So now you get ready for this final round, and they move the time to 11:15 and then 1:15, and you're sitting there going, and I mean, was the feeling that you should have played today? I mean, do you think all the players felt that they were going to get this final round in?
Well, again, it rained when we were sleeping, so I'm staying with some good friends up in Westerville, and some officials had called and said your time is earlier. So we kind of rushed to get ready to come out, and then they called back and said it's later, and then went earlier. So right then, they never tell you you're not going to play, because, you know, it's just not up to them to decide at that time. But, you know, I told them that, you know, now it's disappointing because there's not going to be any chance to catch up. I think Greg Norman played a great round, so did Payne Stewart. You know, if I'd have kept the lead, maybe someone would have said, you know, well, maybe he wouldn't have held on a rain-shortened tournament. Now I think Greg won. I think it's great. I wish I'd have won, there's no question. I think Payne wishes he would have won, or Pooley too, but I think it was well-deserved that Greg fought it out for 54 holes and beat everyone by 1 or more, and he deserves to win.
Well, Fred, nice playing this week, regardless of that double bogey. I know you're going to take a couple weeks off, and look forward to seeing you down the road.
Okay, thanks, Fred.
Okay.
He's a nice shot.
Yeah.
And Fred Couples, nice enough to take some time. I know he was in a hurry to get out of here, but Greg Norman, the winner, this rain-shortened 54-hole Memorial. Greg, his second victory of the year, and we'll be back with much more. Jack Whitaker will join us, and we're going to go back to last year and take a look at that duel between Bob Choi and Fuzzy Zeller in a moment.